Hey, what's up? Today I'm going to show you how to maximize JANK with animated 3D imposters. Okay, so we're going to be using the Godot imposter plugin by ZZJJTT93, who updated a previous octahedral imposter plugin. But anyway, go ahead and find that. It's asset 2321, download it. And once you've downloaded it, unzip it and open it up, and there's an add-ons folder. And what you want to do is just grab that and drag and drop it into your project. Now the next thing we need to do is activate it, and we do that by going to project settings, go to the plugins tab, and then enable it, and it should auto find it because it's in the script. Okay, so the idea of an imposter is, say you've got this tree. Now it's pretty simple as trees go, but if we switch into wireframe mode, we can see that it's got some polygons, and an imposter makes all those go away. So what we do is you select the thing you want to make an imposter of, and then if the add-on is properly activated, then you should be able to hit this. It'll bring up this window, and we want a place to save these. So actually, let's go ahead and just as a general rule, try to keep your project a little tidy. But or actually, so I have this tree folder. I'm gonna add a folder in there for the imposter, and it's gonna generate a few files. So we go ahead and click this to make an imposter. Then we find the directory that we just made and select current folder. It can just be, I don't know why it's tree2, that's just what it got named there. So we have some options. We can do full sphere, which means if you go under it, it will show the bottom. However, that basically halves the resolution, so from the top it's very clicky. Let me just run it at these stats. So hit generate, and then what I find is if you just fiddle with the interface a little, it really pushes things along. Otherwise it can look like it's hanging. And then we should have our imposter. And look at that. They're virtually indistinguishable. You can heighten the resolution if you want. Typically with trees, this would be like far distant sort of thing, so you would be seeing it from a great distance. And the neat thing about these is if we turn wireframe back on, that's the entirety of the imposter. It's just a quad. It puts an image there and it billboards it to face the camera, and then the shader figures out from the image atlas that was generated, which is a little hard to see. I don't know if we can zoom in on this, but that's okay. It's just a bunch of little tiny images. It's an image atlas. So it figures out based on the angle you're looking at it from what it should display. If you wanted it to work from the bottom as well, you would use a full sphere. However, that will lower resolution. But anyway, that's the basic idea of an imposter. Okay, so say you've got this zombie lady. Now this has an animation attached, and if we show editable children and select the animation player, we can see that in action. Alright, to translate this to a 3D imposter, we have to do a few things. We need an imposter for each frame of the animation, but we don't want to do that because that's a lot of texture data, and frankly that wouldn't be janky enough. So we're going to select the first frame, and we're going to make a frame of that, and each salient frame will make a frame for the animation. And with this one, I think that one, when they put the foot down, so that one, and then raise the other foot up midway there, that one, and then put that down. We should be able to get away with about 4 frames. What I'm going to do is go to the first frame and then select the skeleton and click imposter. and you should see it correctly posed. And there are some changes I want to make here. So I'm actually going to make a imposter folder in um, this, so we have a place to put stuff. So generating the imposter, I don't want a full sphere. Let's go ahead and make a shadow mesh, and I'll explain how to do that. And then one thing I like to do is at least double the resolution. And then don't forget to set the directory to the one that you just made. Select current folder and rename this to, I'm going to call it Zombie Walk 0 because it's the 0th frame, and then hit generate. And I'm going to scroll in a little on the interface to make things move along, and there it is. And then it also has this little buddy sprite, and that's the shadow caster. The way that works, I'm going to go ahead and make this local, is if we select the imposter itself and we turn on shadows, we get some just sort of funky business going on. So when you make the little shadow caster, you have the secondary quad that casts shadows, and what we want to do with that is grab it and under cast shadow set it to shadows only. And then if I turn on this plane that I added a moment ago, then you will see that there's a shadow. And without the shadow caster, it's just, so to your taste. But that's how that stuff works. Now, for each frame of the animated imposter, we want to move the animation along to the next frame we want. So I think something like boom, right there. That feels good to me. I'm going to select the skeleton once again, hit imposter, and then call it Zombie Walk 1. I'm going to turn off create shadow mesh and then generate. Fiddle around with things, keep it moving, and do that for each frame of the animation that I want. Alright, and with that we have the texture atlas for each frame of the animation, and there are 4 texture atlases for each frame: albedo, depth, normal, and orm, whatever that is. And in order to animate this, what we want to do is switch out between the different image atlases as the zombie walks. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add a script to the mesh imposter itself. We're going to attach a script, and I'm going to call this animated imposter. And save that, preferably in a scripts folder, but I didn't make one yet. So let's open it here, and then so here it is, the script for doing this whole thing. Basically what this is doing is we have this method for set textures, and we're going to pass in the 4 atlases for each frame and then apply them to the shader. And that's all that's doing. And then if we have a shadow imposter that we're using, if we want that shadow, we're going to do that, but that only has a imposter texture albedo. What we're going to do is add an animation player to our imposter, and then make a new animation, call it walk. And then what we're going to do is add a call method track, and we're going to call it on the mesh imposter itself. And there it is. Make sure you've got the animation player selected. And so we want to right click, insert a key, and we're going to do that set textures method. Click on the key we just added, and we can set up the arguments that we're passing in. So we've got albedo, depth, normal, and orm, and I did it alphabetically because that's the way that they are listed over here in the file system inspector. So this is the first frame, and so we're going to grab the first set of textures and just pop them into their respective spots, and then scroll forward a little to about the same place in the other animation. You can adjust these later, so it's not important. This is just setup and rinse and repeat. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to match the length of the animations. So 1.22667, and then move the keyframes roughly into place. I don't know, something like that. The other thing I'm going to remember to do is assign the shadow imposter. Unfortunately, we won't be able to see this when we run it in the thing, though it can remind us to set it to loop. But we need to actually run the game. Alright, with a few quick additions of a light source and a camera that can look around, we get a little something like this. And the resemblance is simply uncanny. But maybe it's not quite as janky as you want it to be. Maybe you want it pixelated. So let's fix that. If we go to the imposter and we select the shader that's on the material, we get the imposter shader. And what we can do is go down to where the textures are at and add a hint for filter nearest. Go ahead and ignore the fact that it just bugged out, because we need to copy paste it to be used for all of the textures. Alright, so now it's back and it is better than ever. Let's get into it. And there we go. Now that is a janky 3D imposter. Beautiful. So I hope this has been educational or something, and thank you so much for watching. Alright, bye.